Sega.
Hang On is an important title in the history of Sega, being the first sprite scaling game from Yu Suzuki. It ushered in a new level of graphics and gameplay, as well as a pretty funky ride-on arcade unit. First, we'll look at the 1985 arcade version, running on bespoke Hang On hardware. I'll be running this in MAME. Then we'll look at the version of the game inside the Shenmue I II remaster from 2018. At first glance it looks arcade perfect, but there are some differences, as we'll uncover shortly. The arcade game released in 1985 in a number of different cabinets. The upright unit had handlebars attached. Yes, you accelerate by rotating the throttle handle as per a real bike. However, the red sit-down bike replica was the real star. This was the first of Sega's Teikan, or body sensation games, where the cabinet gives a real-life sensation to the gameplay. You had to physically tilt the unit left and right in order to steer the bike in-game. However, what many people don't know is that each cabinet design had a different version of the game. The upright unit begins with a straight, followed by a long right that tightens. Then another straight, into a long left that tightens, before another straight. However, with the ride-on unit, Sega wanted players to experiment with the unique bike interface quicker, so they did away with the slow right and left corners, and instead started with a much faster run into a quick right, quick left, and then right again. If you run both arcade versions side by side, you can easily spot the difference in course design. When the game was included inside the Dreamcast version of Shenmue, they incorrectly used the upright version, but when it was added inside the original Xbox port of Shenmue II, they swapped it to the ride-on version of the game. However, as the game is quite hidden away in Shenmue 2, and the Xbox version wasn't a huge seller, it took the Shenmue I and II remaster to present this changed course to the wider world, which is why numerous videos online refer to this as a new course. It isn't new though, as both versions date from 1985. The arcade version begins with the Hang On logo rotating into place before the Sega logo slides in at the bottom. This is then followed by a silent running demo of the entire game, split into small chunks, with the high score table interrupting things. The demo shows all 5 stages, set in the Alps, Seaside, Grand Canyon, City Night, and Circuit. The game begins with you getting a spectacularly bad start, then you have to simply complete each stage before the time limit runs out to move on to the next location. Interestingly, the ride-on unit starts with 90 seconds on the clock, where the upright unit has just 75. If things go wrong, there are a number of animations that play out. You can do a spin and carry on if you're lucky. If you crash, your bike always explodes. Sometimes your rider stays down. Other times he gets up and collapses. The most extreme crash is where he gets up, then falls down with a cracked helmet. When your time runs out, you'll see a map of how far you travelled and get a chance to enter your name in the high score table. Anyway, let's see how far I get in the arcade ride-on version of the game. The classic Dreamcast open-world games Shenmue and Shenmue II were ported to multiple platforms including the PC in 2018. Within each game is a playable arcade ride-on cabinet of Hang-On. In the original Shenmue game, the cabinet is easily found in the U arcade. In Shenmue 2 it's much harder to find. In the middle part of the game you gain access to the yellow head building by completing a number of tasks. You can enter any room in the building, but they're mostly auto-generated basic looking rooms. That is, apart from room 222 of floor 2, which contains the arcade cabinet, with an unlikely looking maintenance guy just hanging around.
Haven't seen your faces before. I'm in charge of the maintenance of Hang On. How about it? Want to try?
No, Excuse me.
We can talk later. Try playing. You get really excited over this game, you know?
I see.
When you start the game, there are three things that become apparent in this version. Firstly, there are black borders above and below the game. This is because the game is scaled to the nearest integer. Stick around for the pixel comparison for more about this. Secondly, the sound, especially the sound effects, is much louder. That is, apart from the engine noise of passing other bikes, which seems to have been sadly forgotten, although there is still a beeping noise to register a pass. Otherwise, it's fairly authentic to the arcade version, with the exception of changes to sponsorship hoardings in the game, as the arcade was full of real-life unlicensed brands, including many cigarette companies. Watch me play this version now. You only get 75 seconds in the Shenmue port, unlike the ride-on arcade version's 90 seconds, which makes this version much more challenging. Let's compare both versions at a pixel level. First of all, here's the arcade upright unit set to full screen. If I now wipe across to the arcade ride-on unit, you'll see a tree appear in the distance, an easy way to quickly spot the difference between versions, even before the stage begins. If I now wipe across to the version inside Shenmue I, you'll notice the borders top and bottom and your wristwatch overlay, as per the original Dreamcast version. Wiping across to the Shenmue II version eliminates the wristwatch, so this version is even more arcade accurate. But why does the Shenmue I and II version have black borders top and bottom? Well, it's because the game has been scaled to the nearest integer rather than stretching the picture to fully fill the screen. You can set MAME up to show the original arcade version this way too, so let's now wipe across to the arcade version using integer scaling. You can see some pixels shift a little, but the interface at the top is bang on identical. Next, let's do a head-to-head comparison of the arcade using integer scaling alongside the Shenmue II version, which doesn't have the wristwatch present. The arcade version of Hang On was a very important title, setting in motion a sequence of absolute classic Sega arcade games to come. The version inside Shenmue I and II lacks the rival bike engine sound, but is otherwise an almost perfect port if you can look past the borders above and below the picture. If you've hung on all the way to the end of this comparison, give it a like, or subscribe, ring the bell, etc. so you don't miss out on the next one. It'll be the first game with a large number of ports on the PC.